Welcome to the Daily News Currents. Today is December 4th, and for today's headlines we have Elon Musk's more than $50 billion pay deal at Tesla was rejected again. Here's why. South Korea's president backs down from martial law. What to know? Wisconsin judges strike down limits on public sector unions. Kentucky auction of confiscated alcohol includes rare bourbon bottles. The statue of an emperor that lost its head is getting its back. Elon Musk's more than $50 billion pay deal at Tesla was rejected again. Here's why. The judge has again rejected a more than $50 billion compensation package for Tesla CEO Elon Musk, granting a victory to the shareholder who opposed the pay amount. In a ruling on Monday, Delaware Court of Chancery Chancellor Kathleen McCormick said Musk and his attorneys had no procedural ground for flipping her previous decision on January that struck down his pay package. Here's what you need to know about the case. This started in 2018. Monday's decision was just the latest twist in a long-running saga over Musk's pay at Tesla. It is a legal fight that dates back to 2018, when Tesla's shareholders approved a 10-year performance-based pay package for Musk. The compensation package was set up as a series of 12 milestones, each unlocking more compensation as Tesla continued to grow. Under the plan, Musk wouldn't earn a salary, but would receive additional Tesla shares the more the company grew. At the time, many thought it was absurd that Musk would ever hit the targets spelled out in the plan, as the package effectively required Musk to supercharge Tesla's valuation more than 10 times over. Still, the plan drew pushback from at least some Tesla shareholders, including Richard Tornetta, who objected to the compensation package and filed a lawsuit against Musk and Tesla in 2018. In his suit, Tornetta alleged that Musk exercised outsized influence with the board when it crafted the plan, and that investors were misled when they were asked to approve it. Musk has pushed back against those allegations, denying at trial that he dictated terms of the pay package or attended meetings where it was discussed. Lawyers for Tornetta on Monday praised McCormick's decision and said the rule declined Tesla's invitation to inject continued uncertainty into court proceedings. Why so much money? Attorneys for Musk have argued that the massive pay package was approved by shareholders and that its extraordinary compensation was tied to extraordinarily ambitious performance targets. According to the compensation plan that was announced in 2018, in order for Musk to meet the first milestone, Tesla's market cap had to go up $100 billion. For each of the remaining 11 milestones, Tesla's market cap must continue to increase in additional $5 billion increments. Thus, for Elon to fully vest in the award, Tesla's market cap must increase to $650 billion, the company said. Since then, the company has faced a number of setbacks, including slowing growth in EV sales and increasing scrutiny from regulators. But Tesla has also grown significantly. Today, the company is valued at over $1 trillion. But the company's accomplishments were not enough to sway McCormick, who in January ruled that Musk was not entitled to the pay package. In her opinion, Ms. McCormick called the process leading to the plan's approval deeply flawed, citing Musk's role as a controlling shareholder at Tesla as potential conflict of interest. The CEO superstar status can make even a truly independent director likely to be unduly differential and creates a distortion field that interferes with board oversight, she wrote in her January opinion. What the judge says about why she has struck down the pay package. Hoping to sway the judge, Tesla's board took the pay package back to shareholders for a second time this past June, winning the vote with a whopping 72% majority. But it was still not enough to change McCormick's mind. Not only did McCormick strike down the compensation plan for the second time on Monday, she awarded Tornetta $345 million for legal fees that can be paid with either cash or Tesla shares. Plaintiff had asked for $5.6 billion, but the judge called that a bold ask. McCormick has invited Tesla to create a new package for Musk, but the June vote did not represent a new plan, but rather ratification of the original agreement. As with her earlier ruling, McCormick again expressed concern about Musk's control and influence over the company, including its board. There were undoubtedly a range of healthy amounts that the board could have decided to pay Musk, McCormick wrote, but she said that the boards instead capitulated to Musk's terms, and then failed to prove that those terms were entirely fair. McCormick also said no Delaware court had ever reversed its judgment based on a stockholder vote that took place after trial, and noted that if companies could create new facts after judgment was reached, that lawsuits would become interminable. What will happen next? Attorneys for Musk did not respond to requests for comment, but writing on X, the social media platform he owns, Musk said, "Shareholders should control company votes, not judges." Tesla also called the court decision wrong in a post on X and said it would appeal. That appeal will likely be filed in the Delaware Supreme Court. This ruling, if not overturned, means that judges and plaintiff lawyers run Delaware companies rather than the rightful owners, the shareholders, the company wrote Monday evening. Attorneys for the Tesla shareholders who opposed Musk's pay said they would defend the court's thoughtful and well-grounded opinions if the ruling is appealed. South Korea president backs down from martial law. What to know? President Yoon Suk-yeol has been locked in a bitter fight with the opposition, which controls parliament. President Yoon Suk-yeol of South Korea declared martial law on Tuesday night, accusing the opposition of trying to overthrow the free democracy. But about 5 hours later, he said he would lift the declaration, bowing to pressure after the National Assembly unanimously passed a resolution demanding that it end. "I will lift martial law as soon as we have a quorum in the cabinet. It is early in the morning, so we don't have a quorum yet," Mr. Yoon said in an address. He called on the legislature to immediately stop the outrageous behavior that is paralyzing the function of the country with impeachments, legislative manipulation, and budget manipulation. It was the first martial law declaration in more than 4 decades in South Korea, which saw the end of military dictatorship in the late 1980s. Mr. Yoon, who was elected president in 2022, has been in near constant political standoff with the opposition, which controls parliament, and his government has faced plunging public approval ratings. In his speech declaring martial law late Tuesday, Mr. Yoon said he was making the move to defend the Free Republic of Korea from the threats of North Korea communist forces and to eradicate the shameless pro-North Korean anti-state forces that are plundering the freedom and happiness of our people and to protect the free constitutional order. "Through this emergency martial law, I will rebuild and defend the Free Republic of Korea, which is falling into ruin." What does the martial law declaration mean? The country's constitution states that the president may proclaim martial law when required to cope with a military necessity or to maintain the public safety, an order by mobilization of the military forces in time of war, armed conflict, or similar national emergency. Army General Park An-soo, who was appointed martial law commander by Mr. Yoon, banned all political activities, including political party activities and citizen rallies. "All news media and publications are under the control of martial law command," General Park said. His edict also blamed labor activities and spreading fake news. "Those who violate the decree can be arrested without a court warrant," it said. According to South Korean news agencies, Yonhap, the martial law command says all media and publishers are to be under its control and orders all medical staff, including trainee doctors, many of whom have been on strike, to return to work in 48 hours. Those who violate the martial law can be arrested without warrant. Who is Yoon Suk-yeol? Mr. Yoon, a former prosecutor, won an extremely close presidential election in 2022, bringing the country's conservatives back to power with calls for a more confrontational stance against North Korea and a stronger alliance with the United States. He replaced President Moon Jae-in, a progressive leader who served a single 5-year term and by law could not run again. When he was sworn into office in May of that year, Mr. Yoon vowed to stand for values including freedom and liberal democracy. Soon after he was elected, however, Mr. Yoon began turning to lawsuits, state regulators, and criminal investigators to clamp down on speech that he called disinformation, efforts that were largely aimed at news organizations. Police and prosecutors repeatedly raided homes and newsrooms of journalists whom his office had accused of spreading fake news. In April, Mr. Yoon's People Power Party suffered a stinging defeat in parliament elections, giving the opposition a huge majority. He became the first South Korean president in decades to contend with an opposition-controlled parliament for his entire time in office. How did South Korea's political parties react? Han Dong-hoon, a leader of Mr. Yoon's own People Power Party, said the declaration of martial law is wrong and that he will block it, South Korean's Yonhap news agency reported. Lee Jae-myung, the South Korean opposition leader, recorded a video in a car on his way to the National Assembly, asking citizens to congregate there. "There is no reason to declare martial law. We cannot let the military rule this country," he said. President Yoon Suk-yeol has betrayed the people. President Yoon's illegal declaration of emergency martial law is null and void. From this moment on, Mr. Yoon is no longer the president of South Korea. Lee Jae-myung, a South Korean lawmaker who is the member of the Democratic Party, wrote on Facebook that she's making her way to the National Assembly. "We will stop this at all costs," she said. Broadcasts by state news media showed soldiers and police officers pushing past citizens trying to enter the National Assembly building as protesters shouted, "End martial law! End martial law!" How could martial law be lifted? Under South Korean law, martial law can be lifted with a majority vote in the parliament, where the opposition Democratic Party holds a majority. When the National Assembly requests the lifting of martial law, the president shall, without delay, do so and announce it, the law states. Live footage from the National Assembly showed that some lawmakers seemed to be holding an emergency meeting held by Woo Won-sik, the Speaker of the National Assembly. Mr. Woo later said President Yoon's declaration of martial law had become null and void after the Assembly adopted a resolution demand its lifting. Wisconsin judge strikes down limits on public sector unions. 2011 law stripped most government workers in the state of collective bargaining rights and set off protests that lasted weeks. A Wisconsin judge on Monday struck down portions of the 2011 law that stripped most government workers in the state of collective bargaining rights and set off fierce demonstrations. The ruling by Judge Jacob Frost of Dane County Circuit Court is certain to be appealed, but his decision provided at least a temporary victory to labor unions and Democrats in Wisconsin, who turned out by the thousands to protest the law more than a decade ago and have been trying ever since to take it off the books. Restoring union freedoms to Wisconsin workers will strengthen Wisconsin's middle class, uplift the voices of workers, and lead to better public services for our communities, said Stephanie Bloomingdale, the president of the Wisconsin AFL-CIO, in a statement. Republicans passed a law known as Act 10 shortly after winning control of state government in its 2010 elections, arguing that limits on public sector unions were necessary to balance the budget and attract business investments. They advanced the legislation despite large-scale protests at the state capitol in Madison and an attempt by Democratic lawmakers to scuttle the vote by fleeing to Illinois. The law, which was part of a wave of Republican-backed legislation nationally that curbed the power of unions, helped set off a contentious era in Wisconsin politics that has been defined by close elections, partisan recriminations, and sharply clashing views over the future of the state and country. Former Governor Scott Walker, a Republican who signed Act 10 into law, has made it a centerpiece of his political legacy, calling Judge Frost's ruling brazen political activism in a post on social media. "We want a state where legislators and the governor make the laws, not the court." Mr. Walker's successor, Governor Tony Evers, a Democrat, called the ruling great news for Wisconsin workers in a statement in his own, adding that "I've always believed workers should have a seat at the table in decisions that affect their daily lives and livelihoods." But Monday's decision seems unlikely to be the final word on the issue. Robin Vos, the Republican Speaker of the Wisconsin Assembly, vowed in a statement on Monday to appeal. This lawsuit came more than a decade after Act 10 became law, and many courts rejected the same meritless legal challenges, Mr. Vos said. When they crafted the law, Republicans carved out an exception that allowed police officers and firefighters to continue bargaining collectively. Judge Frost said that this distinction was unconstitutional, and it made it impossible for key portions of the law to remain in effect. This case seems likely to end up before the Wisconsin Supreme Court, which has been at the center of recent battles over elections and abortions, which upheld Act 10 in 2014 when conservative justices were the majority. The court is officially nonpartisan, but has grown highly politicized. Liberals currently hold a one-seat majority, but conservatives would regain control if their candidate wins a spring election for an open seat. Even as union leaders celebrated the ruling on Monday, they acknowledged that an appeal was almost certainly coming. "We realize that there may still be a fight ahead of us in the courts, but make no mistake, we're ready to keep fighting," said Ben Gruber, a conservative warden and local union president who was a plaintiff in the case. 13 years after the Act 10 protest, Wisconsin remains politically divided. President-elect Donald J. Trump narrowly carried the state last month, while voters also elected Senator Tammy Baldwin, a Democrat, to another term. Kentucky's auction of confiscated alcohol includes rare bourbon bottles. A new state law grants the Kentucky Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control the authority to auction off impounded alcohol. Kentucky bourbon fans could be giving thanks this week as state auctions off some rare confiscated bottles. The Kentucky Department of Alcohol Beverage Control is holding the state's first online auction of seized alcohol, including rare bourbons like Four Roses 2011 Strength and Bolton's Single Barrel Gold. Bidding begins Wednesday and will close at midnight on December 11th, the department said on its website. A new state law signed in April grants the department the authority to auction off impounded alcohol once a criminal or administrative case has been completed. 32 bottles are up for sale, including a bundle of wine, vodka, rum, and whiskey, according to the state. Bottles available for bidding include Old Fitzgerald Counties of Ireland with a personal decanter, Old Rip Van Winkle handmade bourbon aged 10 years, Blanton's Single Barrel Gold, which comes in a box with Japanese markings on it, Eagle Rare aged 10 years, E.H. Taylor Seasoned Wood and 4-grain, Waller Antique 107, and a Maker's Mark Breeders' Cup signed by Mike Smith, the most successful jockey in Breeders' Cup history. Old Rip Van Winkle handmade bourbon aged 10 years retails of at least $800, according to the Bourbon Flight, a publication that covers the bourbon industry. The distillery restricts the number of bottles released each year, and they sell it quickly, which drives the secondary market where they sell for far above the retail price. Bidders must be 21 years or older. Bottles will be picked up in Frankfort, Kentucky. The event's proceeds raise money for the Alcohol Wellness and Responsibility Education, AWARE Corporation, which provides grants to Kentucky high schoolers, colleges, universities, and outside organizations to support substance abuse programs. Link to the website's auction is available on the department website. It is not clear how much the auction is estimated to raise. The statue of an emperor that lost its head is getting it back. A Danish museum is returning a bronze head of Septimus Severus to Turkey after agreeing that it was probably looted from a shrine honoring Roman leaders. In an ancient bronze thought to be a likeness of the Roman emperor, Septimus Severus is to be reunited with its long-lost torso after a Danish museum agreed that its sculpture of a bearded man head had been looted and should return to Turkey. The torso, which for years stood in the Roman Court of Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, was returned to Turkey in 2023 after its seizure by investigators who said it had been looted. Since then, the Turkish government has been petitioning the New York Carlsberg Glotec in Copenhagen, requesting the return of the 2,000-year-old head to complete the statue. Last week, the Danish museum said its researchers had concluded that the artifact, which had been in its collection since 1970, was likely to have been excavated illegally from Buban, a site in the southwest of Turkey that investigators say was heavily looted in the 1960s. The Danish museum said it had made its decision after prolonged research. Exceptionally strong arguments and scientific documentation are required to separate work from the museum's collection, Gertrude Havenberg Hansen, museum director, said in a statement. In the case of this object, both criteria were present. Severus was a wily general who outmaneuvered 4 rivals to assume the emperor's seat, and he ruled Rome from 193 AD until his death, 211 AD. His intact statue had been part of a group of bronzes that experts believe was set up 2,000 years ago as a shrine to the imperial cult in Buban, when the region was a distant part of the Roman Empire. As part of the cult, the emperors were worshipped as gods. At some point in history, the site was buried underground, but was targeted by looters in the 1960s, and artifacts were removed and sold in violations of Turkey's cultural property law, investigators say. It is not clear whether the torso lost its head at the time of the illegal exhibition, or whether the separation had occurred centuries or millenniums earlier in the tumult of history. The Danish Museum said in its statement that archival and archaeological studies and technical analysis of Severus's head has led to its conclusion that it had been looted. The head, it said, probably belongs to a larger group of bronze sculptures in the Roman imperial family, believed to have originated from the so-called Sebasurstrion, a shrine in the Roman imperial cult in Buban. Turkey welcomed the return of the emperor's head, and Hakan Tekin, the Turkish ambassador to Denmark, said the museum has done the right thing. This development sets another precedent for institutions and collectors all over the world, including in Denmark, that all artifacts acquired with a shady provenance should be returned to their rightful owners, he said in a statement. For many years, the Glotec had said that its ancient head belonged to the torso in the Met and had exhibited them together in Copenhagen in 1979. But in recent years, museum officials expressed skepticism that the two were an exact match, saying in an interview in 2023 that the evidence linking them was circumstantial and weak. The Met did not embrace the theory that the torso was a depiction of Severus. In the 12 it had it, the museum called the figure simply a bronze statue of a nude male figure. The Glyptotek said that while its new research has determined that it had probably originated in Bhuban, the experts were not as confident in asserting that it belonged to the body seized from the Met. The Glyptotek's research had not been able to examine the possible connection between the bronze portrait and the bronze body, it said. It is therefore not possible to comment on the relationship between these two artifacts. The Danish Museum said it has purchased the head in 1970 for $365,500 Swiss francs, or about $85,000, from Robert Hecht, an American dealer who would become famous and later infamous as one of the world's greatest dealers of antiquities, both looted and legitimate. In addition to the torso at the Met, investigators from the Manhattan District Attorney's Antiquities Trafficking Unit in recent years has seized and returned several other items that experts believe were taken from Bhuban, including statues of the emperors Lucius Verus and Caracalla. That is all that we have for today. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye!